Hi everybody, my name is Elisa. Welcome back to my channel, Thrills and Stitches. If you've been here before, you know what I'm all about. I'm creating my dream wardrobe from scratch and I'm taking you along for the ride so maybe you can recreate some of the pieces that I make at home. Alright, so this week we are tackling a new project. It's project number 2 out of 3 in my festive wardrobe series, a series that I have started because I wanted to show you what kind of dresses I'm wearing for the holiday season, which is one of my favorite seasons of the year. There are so many occasions coming up where we can dress up and put our best tutorial foot forward when we meet family, friends, chosen family, and all the people that we love. And we hang out and we have dinner and we have wine and all the good things. If you are an attentive viewer of my Instagram stories, you know that I have been obsessed with this particular dress here, beautifully worn by Phoebe Dynevor from Bridgerton. I am obsessed with this dress. I'm obsessed with the color, I'm obsessed with the contrasting white zips, and I've been wanting to make this ever since I bought this magazine, and I have been on the hunt for the right kind of fabric ever since I bought this magazine. It was really a challenge, let me tell you. I have been running up and down the high street to try to find the right kind of fabric. In the magazine itself, it says it's a cotton silk mix, which could be anything really. It's really hard to make out what kind of fabric it is from this description. So these are some of the things that I found. I went to several shops to get fabric swatches, and this for example is a raw silk. I don't know what this is. It's a bit elastic. I think it's a synthetic material. I don't quite know what to call this, but none of this really seemed quite right to me. They were also really pricey. Both of these fabrics are over £35 a meter, which yeah, I mean, is a lot. Until one day I went into a shop and I saw this beautiful emerald green satin. Satin was actually something that I didn't want to go with in the beginning, but in the end I was like, okay, it's a festive dress. It's supposed to be very elegant and chic, so satin might be the right choice. Actually, initially I saw this fabric rolled up on a roll and I saw the wrong side first and I was thinking, ooh, you know what, actually I could use the wrong side. But when I cut out my pieces, finally I decided, no, let's go with the right side. It's just too pretty to be hidden away, and that's what I went with. So this dress happens to be also by Nicolas Ghesquière at Louis Vuitton. If you watched last week's video, you know that I already made a dress that was inspired by some of his designs. However, the designs that I used as an inspiration last week were from 2014, which is quite a while ago, and this dress is from the Resort 2020 collection. In this magazine, it's not actually featured in any picture in full length, so I don't actually know how long this is, and I was unable to find it on Louis Vuitton's website, probably because it's sold out. So I decided to go with a mini length for this dress just because it already has long sleeves and a stand-up collar and a quite poofy skirt, so I decided to make it a mini dress to show some skin. I'm really excited to show you how this turned out. In this video I'm going to show you exactly how I made the dress, so how I put it together, how I sewed it together, and I will upload another video next week where I will show you exactly how I created the pattern for this dress, so stay tuned for that. And without further ado, let's jump straight in. Or we might postpone starting the project for a little bit because we have to go to the city to get Christmas presents. Okay guys, all of the pieces are cut out. These are currently just the lining pieces because the other ones are on my bed. We have the sleeve, we have the side panel for the skirt doubled, we have a front skirt panel, and we have this back skirt panel, which is also, there's another one that mirrors this one because obviously there's going to be a zip along the center back. Which are these? I think they're pretty good. They're plastic with this metal handle here. There are several steps to this dress. We have a lining and we have a shell. So the first thing we will do is we will assemble the shell. Because I have sewn this before in a calico and already adjusted the pattern, my hope and my dream for this is to fit like a glove after sewing it one time. So let's see if this dream comes true. Let's assemble the first couple of pieces. So we have this piece, which is the center front of our bodice. As I have decided, this is now the right side of the dress, which means that we will have to place the middle part so that it's facing us, and we grab one of the side pieces and place it right sides touching. Now you can see here that I've created these little notches. I have them in the center front piece and I have them in the side piece, and I need to make sure that these align, because ideally if they do and we pin the princess seam together, then the lengths should match up pretty good and be about equal length. One princess seam is pinned together, and I'm going to also do the same thing on the other side, placing the two pieces right sides touching and making sure that these notches here line up, and that's where I place my first pin. All right, let's sew this thing together. Okay, all of the seams in the bodice are sewn together. Now, to see its true shape, we will have to press this. All right, I just gave the bodice a press, and actually it reacted quite well to the iron. It wasn't melting, didn't change the sheen, so it's all good. So what I'm gonna do next is to join the shoulder seams. How am I going to do that? So if you look at one half of the bodice here, this is the back and this is the front. We don't have a side seam. We're just folding this over so that the right sides are facing each other. And then we are placing the shoulder together, and we're making sure that the two seams meet up perfectly. So the two princess seam, the princess seam in the back and the princess seam in the front. This is one alteration I've been making in my calico mock-up, and now I'm gonna give this a straight stitch with a stitch length of 3.5 just to make sure, in case I need to open it up again, which I don't think I will, but you never know. Yay! Princess seam matches up in the front and in the back. This is what we want. Look how pretty! Beautiful! Okay, first trial of the bodice, and it looks pretty good. Fits in the back, which is important. So the seams are fine. The apex of the bust is quite right, I think. What I'm going to do is I'm going to understitch the seam allowance. So there's a decorative stitch on the outside. You can also see this in the original dress. I will also make the shoulders shorter. This is the same thing every damn time. Even though I already changed this in the pattern, it's still too wide. I don't know why this keeps happening. And I'll also cut it a little bit lower here. So these are the changes I'm going to make. I just top stitched all of the princess seams like so. So we have a beautiful finish everywhere and the seams lie flat. And now I need to cut my armholes bigger. So this requires feeling. I don't think I can give you a good tip for this. This just requires a bit of fearlessness and feeling. Friends, it's the next day, early morning. After having tested to attach the skirt panels in different ways with different pleats, I think I'm now ready to commit. So I've decided to have one box pleat in the center of each panel and go with that because I think that's going to look the nicest. So to attach the skirt panels to the top, you can see that I've marked the center front point in my bodice with this little notch here, and the pleat is also in the center front of the skirt panel. Now I'm placing these 2 points on top of each other and make sure that the right sides of each piece are facing, and I'm placing a needle. This is my first needle. And now I can start to pin the skirt piece into its designated curve. Okay, now that I've pinned this in, I can give it a stitch, and I'm going to do that with a stitch length of 3.5. I'm going to sew to the seam that I've created in the bodice here, all the way around to the same point on the other side. One piece is in, there are no pleats, which is good. And now we can continue with the next one. So I inserted all of the skirt panels, and as you can see here, this point here that meets at the exact end of the princess seam, if you turn this around, you have this beautiful pointed insertion here. All the skirt panels are in. I think this looks rather good. I like the dimension it has and that it comes out in this like balloony effect. It's like the original or very close to it. And now we just need to join the skirt panels together, which should be easy. All right, how exciting. Now, since all of the skirt panels are in their respective curves, we can join them together at the seams, which is actually quite simple. We just turn the dress inside out, and then we're taking the two panels we want to join and line them like so. And the important thing is that we start the seam right where the end of the point that we've just sewn earlier when we inserted the skirt panel ends. So right here. That basically means that 1, 2, 3 seams join at the same point. And if you manage to do that neatly, then you're gonna have a beautiful result. This is definitely more like intermediate sewing level. I mean, this dress is probably not for beginners, I would say, unless you're super, super motivated to do it. And I believe in you. I think you can do anything. But just be prepared that, you know, this is not the easiest project in the world, but that doesn't mean that you can't do it. Right, so I'm gonna start sewing the first seam, again with a stitch length of 3.5. I hardly ever have breakfast, but today it's a cookie for breakfast. I made those yesterday. They're vegan with coconut sugar, orange, and vegan dark chocolate. Quite good. Okay, so since the shell of the dress is basically put together, there were two options for what to do next, and I've decided to go with the sleeves. So we have sleeves here that are asymmetrical. So we have a front and we have a back. The back is a bit more straight and the front has a bend in it that kind of mimics the bend of your elbow. And you simply grab that and place it so that the seams are lined up, right sides touching. And I'm going to quickly give that a few pins. So this is where one of the zips is going to go in, but I've decided to just base stitch the seam together to give it a try and see if it works, and then also probably press the seam apart so I have a guidance for where the zip goes in later. Okay, so the sleeve seems to fit. It's a bit wide down here. We don't want it this wide. Okay, so I gave the sleeve a test. It looks good. I think this is what I want it to be. I cut it back a little bit and changed the length. Now I'm gonna open this up again and transfer my changes to the other sleeve. Okay, now we're getting to the exciting part. We are going to insert our first zip. We do that by looking at the sleeve so that the right side is facing us and we're grabbing our zips. And the goal is to sew as close to the teeth of the zip as possible so that only this is showing. Now we're gonna have to place the zip so that it's flush with our seam allowance, but also leave us a little bit of a space down here so we can have a nice length in the sleeve. I will start to pin the one side of the zip to the sleeve now. Then I'm going to move over here to the other side of the sleeve. I'm going to close the zip, move this over here, and I will have to make sure that I also again give myself a little bit of space at the end of the sleeve so we can have a nice hem here at the cuff. And now I'm pinning this in with more needles so we can be sure that the two sides align once we're finished. And again, I'm gonna sew it so that I'm about 1/2 centimeter away from the teeth, so when we look at it from the outside, we have an even finish. Let's see if that works. Okay guys, this looks very, very promising. I'm super stoked about how this turned out. Oops. This is currently the left sleeve and I really like it. I think it looks great. It looks very close to the original. If you look at this sleeve here and look at this result here, really quite happy with it. So now what I am going to do is I will line the sleeve as I will line the rest of the dress, and I'm going to show you how I do that in a sec. Okay, so we have our sleeve here. And currently the right side is facing inward, and we have our lining. Now we are going to place the lining right sides facing the sleeve, and we need to do that and make sure that the front side of the sleeve is facing the front and the back side of the sleeve is facing the back, because we have an asymmetrical sleeve. And then we're going to pin this in place just with a few pins, and then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Now we have this little sandwich here where we have the right side of the sleeve and the zip facing the inside. Now we're going to sew this on, and we're going to try to sew it exactly where we had the seam from attaching the zip earlier on both sides, and then we can turn it all around. Okay, the sleeve was given a press, and now if we close this, ta-da! It is beautiful, it is lined, it looks gorgeous. I love it. I'm in love. And it looks amazing on the inside too. Look at this. Right. And now to finish off the cuff, we will reach into the sleeve between the lining and the shell. So you open this up, you reach in here. You're then going to grab the end of the shell and the end of the lining like so. You fold it towards each other like you want it to be sewn together, and then you pull it out. And now we can simply sew a straight line here to finish off our sleeve. And this is one sleeve finished. Now I need to repeat all the same steps with the other sleeve. Alright, so both sleeves are finished. They're not obviously yet inserted in the dress, I just hung them there. And I also just completed the bodice in lining. I basically just repeated the exact same steps that I took for the shell. And now I was thinking about how to fully line the dress, and I don't have that much lining left actually. And I also can't be bothered to repeat all the steps that I took with the panels and fill them in here to replicate the exact shape of the dress of the shell in the lining. So now I realized what I could do, and would probably be a very comfortable solution, would be to cut the bodice so that I have a straight ending and not these curves here. And then I'm simply going to cut a panel. Hold on. So simply cut a panel of my lining fabric, gather it at the top, attach it to the bodice, and then have that as a lining skirt on the inside of the dress. And I think that's what I'm going to do. Okay, gotta be brave. Gotta do it. Now, I'm grabbing this panel that I've just cut, and I'm gonna add a basting stitch to this. So I set my machine to a stitch length of 5, and I'm gonna add a simple seam to the top of this panel without closing the beginning and the end. And what's important is that we are going to gather this to a width of 84 centimeters, so I'm already a bit too small. All right, so I think this is a nice shot to see the difference between shell and lining. I'm currently wearing the lining. I mean, also looks cute, a bit of a baby doll moment. And this is what's going into the shell. So we have a beautiful inside and a beautiful outside. And I'm happy to say that all the nitty-gritty stuff is sort of done. And we can now have a think about joining lining and shell together forever, to never be apart. This is the exciting part because we're entering the final stretch. So we have this piece here, which is going to be our collar. This is a very, very simple square that I've pressed together like so. And this is going to be our standing collar. It's the exact distance between, or basically it's the exact circumference of our neck hole. So you can see it fits like a glove. So we have this, we have our shell, and we have our lining. So to join all of this together, we are going to place the lining inside of the shell. We're going to make sure that the left sides are touching so that all the not so nice, seam allowances and the fraying edges are all facing each other. We are going to pin all of that together in a few key places. So the key places are the shoulder points as well as the center front and the other shoulder point. We are going to use our collar to neatly join the two shell and lining bodies together, and we're going to do that by taking the square, opening it up and placing it like so, sandwiching the lining and the shell together. So now we have this very convoluted looking sandwich. So we have the lining on the inside, the shell on the outside, and we have the collar, which is about to hide everything neatly. I'm going to use a stitch length of 3, doesn't have to be too tight, and I'm going to give myself a seam allowance of about 1/2 centimeter. So I'm basically trying to align by feeling the seams. I'm trying to align them so everything is exactly where it's supposed to be. And when I wear it, I can make sure that I'm comfortable. Now we kind of made sure that the lining and the shell feel comfortable with each other, that there's no tugging, no towing in the wrong directions. And since we've done that, we can now put in the zip.
The snow is falling down. I've been longing for this Christmas.
Right. How is this going to go in here? Ideally, we would want for it to disappear between lining and shell like it did in the sleeves. So a little bit like that on the outside and on the inside. However, because of how I decided to attach the collar, this is not going to be possible unless it were to stop here and not at the end of the collar. But I want the zip to end up here. So I think what I will do instead is I will simply sew the zip in so that you can see the white on the inside later. So we will have a clean look on the outside like so, and then you can see the white on the inside. Obviously I'm going to cut back the seam allowance so it's clean, and then I'm probably going to hand stitch this close to the lining so it's not coming off, and that's what I'm going to do. I don't think that this is going to be uncomfortable. Oh, why is this open? Because it's a jacket zip, obviously. Okay, don't open it entirely. Okay, since I realized that my idea with attaching the collar didn't work the way I initially planned, I just switched it around. So I sewed the collar onto the right side of the shell, so that the right sides are facing. So now all the raw edges are on the inside of the piece. And now I should be able to attach the zip the way I had initially planned. So I can simply attach the zip with a seam and a stitch length of 3 onto the dress. Okay, so this is what we are looking at the moment. The zip is in. Success. And now to achieve a nice finish at the end of the collar, I'm simply going to overlap it like so. I'm going to sew straight down here. So when I turn it inside out, we have the nice side showing, and that's it. Okay, so the lining is in the dress, it's all looking good. Now the idea is, the zip ends here as you can see. So we have this open space, which allows us to reach inside the lining of the shell and grab the two ends and pull them out on the side so we can sew all the way along the hem to close it. I think that's what I'm going to try to do. All right, so we have this very convoluted looking thing here. So basically I just pulled the hem out on the side like I explained to you earlier, and I pinned it all the way around, making sure that any ease or excess in one of the two, lining or shell, is evenly distributed. And now we can simply sew that together and then pull it inside out, and we should have a nice hem. Okay, so the hem is finished. I gave it a press as well, so it looks good and pretty. And now we'll close the center back shell as far as I can to where the zip starts. So for that, I'm gonna close the zip, and then I will reach into the dress like so. I will grab the end of my hem where I placed the pin to make sure that the two edges of my hem match up, and I'm gonna pull this through. I will now close the center back from where the seam where I just closed my hem starts to where the zip begins. I'm probably not going to be able to sew too close to it, and I will have to close the rest of it by hand. When I turn this outside out, we can see that the center back is closed from the outside. The hem matches up. I'm going to give that a quick press. To close the lining on the inside, we're going to do something that might look very weird, but is, I think, quite common in lining things. So I'm simply going to fold the seam allowance in like so on both sides, and then I'm going to line these things up like that, and then I'm going to simply top stitch that. While this may still look like a hot mess, we're almost finished. So what I've just done, and what I would recommend you to do too, is I stitched around my armhole so that the lining of the shell aren't moving around too much when I'm now inserting my sleeves, which is so exciting. I'm absolutely stoked for this process because it means we're almost done. And if we look at our sleeves, we have a front and a back in our sleeves, and I marked it with these little notches. So in this case, I'm currently having the right sleeve in my hand, which means that I will have to pin the sleeve into the armhole so that this side is looking into the front. Okay, and now I'll have a look on what it looks like on the outside to see if this is what I would want to be going for. And it's gonna look a little bit more smooth once we've sewn it in, so I'll give that a stitch. I'll do it with a stitch length of 5, just to be sure in case I need to open it up again. And what I will do is I will start where the zip begins, and I'll sew all the way around before the zip ends, and then the rest we can do by hand later. Yeah, you guys, so this is it. This is the dress. I think it looks really cute. It's very out there for me. It's not usually something that I would be immediately drawn to, but I just love the green and I love the contrasting zips, and I think it's a really nice nod to Christmas while not being like too over the top. It's a Christmassy, beautiful, elegant color in a sporty yet elegant dress, and I think that's really cool. And that's it, everybody. I hope you liked this video. If you're interested in how to draft the pattern for this dress, stay tuned. I'm gonna upload the video on Wednesday. Hopefully see you then, and see you next week. Bye.